Welcome, everybody, to another episode of Your Spiritual Journey. This is Dr. Bob, and this is a space and the place where we talk about things important to your soul. As always, if you're watching on YouTube, please subscribe. It really helps us stay on the air. And you can like us, and that's always beneficial also. This is, I'm proud to say, our 100th episode of Your Spiritual Journey. And in light of that, before I get into our special guest, I wanted to provide you with some information about how far we've come and how we've gotten here. And then we'll talk to Tony Nackino, who was actually on episode 80. And I've invited him back because at the end of episode 80, I had 16 different topics that I wanted to still cover with him that we hadn't got to in our hour discussion at that point. So I told him I'd have him back, and I thought our 100th episode would be a great time to do that. So let me just say that we began this whole podcast. I began doing this podcast based on an inspiration that I had. And when I say inspiration, that means a message from Spirit. And I was getting that same message over and over again and ignoring it for a while because I didn't know much about podcasts. So I had to do some research. And it was based on that I decided to jump in after obtaining a mentor. And that mentor is Professor Buzzkill. So I want to mention his podcast to you, where Joe just goes over a lot of things about history that are incorrect that we learned growing up. So check out Professor Buzzkill and his podcast. I also got an encouragement from a friend, Jim Lankner, and the members of two different spiritual groups that I belong to that said, yeah, you got to do this. I want to thank the StudioMe staff here where we record, Peter Reagan and Maria Basadi especially. And the whole concept of this was to provide the audience with a perspective on spirituality that they may not have had originally. That particular mission has expanded to also provide the audience with tools that you can use to find peace in your life. And Tony and I will be talking about many of those tools that you can use after I finish this introduction to the 100th episode. So people sometimes ask me, well, where do your guests come from? Where do you and how do you decide what guests to have on your program? A lot of these people are from my own personal contacts, people I know from spiritual groups that I participated in. Many of them are from referrals from the audience, referrals from publicists, and referrals from friends and other people who have been on the podcast. They tend to refer other people to me who they think would be good guests. I also get referrals from psychic fairs and the Mind, Body, and Soul Expo, from the Northeast Reiki Retreat that I frequently talk about, from the Pittsburgh spiritual scene. Pittsburgh is pretty much a spiritual vortex, and so there are a lot of spiritual people right here in my community. Also from Bodhi Tree Magazine, which is an online Facebook magazine worth checking out. Some of my guests have been far flung. I've had guests from Canada, from England, from Argentina, from South Africa, from Australia, and from New Zealand, as well as from all over the U.S. We've had over 5,000 views now on YouTube and over 5,000 downloads on various podcast platforms. We've had listeners in 40 of the 50 states and so far from 50 different countries. The perspectives that I've tried to offer are extremely varied. We've had people from the Jewish community, from the Christian community, from the Muslim community. We've had a Sikh. We've had someone who follows Wicca. We've had a pagan. People who believe in Gnostic revelation and have received Gnostic revelation. We've had Reiki masters, sound healers, someone who teaches Feldenkrais, Qigong, yoga. We've had Mormons and Catholics and eth-Catholics and Presbyterians and Lutherans and just a plethora of different spiritual paths and spiritual journeys. And we will continue to do that. So that gives you some of the background, what we've accomplished so far. I thank you for listening and for watching and being part of this spiritual community. And with that, I'm going to take us to our current focus, which is on spiritual practices that will give you some sense of peace in a world full of chaos. So, Tony, I just want to give a very short introduction to you for people who didn't catch you on episode 80. I do recommend people tune into that to learn more about Tony. But Tony was born and raised in Youngstown, Ohio, to an Italian family. He was the fifth of 6 children. He began questioning the meaning of life at a young age, and his search took him through the typical waypoints: religion, education, career success, marriage, children, a house in the suburbs, divorce, remarriage. And I know his wife, Patty. It wasn't until he read a magazine interview with Dr. Jacob Needleman titled Beyond Belief that he felt he was looking in the right direction. He holds bachelor's degrees in theology, philosophy, and mechanical engineering, and he now resides with his wife, Patricia, in Ojai, California. So if you want to know more about him, check out episode 80. But Tony, welcome. It's good to have you back.
Thank you, Bob. It's good to be here. And I just want to say thank you for these 100 episodes, these 100 interviews that you've provided. Wonderful service, Bob. I only came to know about your blog just a few months ago, but it's a great service. I think it's a wonderful way of disseminating positive energy. Thanks for that.
Well, it's interesting that I've known Tony for a while through Zoom, but I only met him in person a couple weeks ago. Yeah. He was visiting his grandchildren here in Pittsburgh, and I was able to get 20 minutes with him because he was in the park right across the street from my church. So, and he was doing that on a Sunday with the grandkids, and I was able to walk right out of church and across the street and have a conversation with him.
Perfect timing.
Yeah, sometimes the universe just gets it right. In
That's it.
fact, most of the time, the universe just gets it right, as I've found.
Yeah, yeah.
So, Tony, I did send you a list of topics that I felt that we should cover, and this was the list that I had for our last interview that I never got to. Uh, and I wondered if anything on that list stood out to you as maybe a good place to start.
Yeah, yeah, Bob, I think so. They all listed a whole bunch of ideas and thoughts in my mind, but as I went through the first three, and I'll read those now: prayer and meditation being one, self-love, and then sense of purpose. You wrote, and then the fourth one also is important: compassion for others. What came to me was the word patience, and how we human beings are notoriously impatient. Uh, and so, I guess that theme, I think, felt right for me to explore. What does that mean to our spiritual journey? And how, therefore, does it affect us personally and affect our relationships and and our and our peace of mind, our sanity. Um, so a couple fun little graphics I like to provide. Um, I just discovered a while back. I tried to convey this to my grandchild. In fact, in Pittsburgh, he wasn't too interested. But if he's Auden, this was Auden. He is 6. So did you know that the first dinosaur bone was only discovered 350 years ago? That's all. 350 years ago. So if this represents my 70 years on Earth, there'd be 5 of these strung together, and that's 350 years ago when dinosaurs were discovered. That's a very short period of time in the scheme of all things. And I guess I raised that to say that it's almost humorous that we human beings are so impatient with our experience. Our 80-year, 90-year experience, hopefully, we seem to want to just view it as infinite time, and not appreciate its immediacy, its nowness, and how much does impatience play into our spiritual journey? And I would propose that we are very unkind to ourselves and impatient with our spiritual journey many times. We want to make better progress. We want to understand things clearer. We want to feel more connected. And without recognizing that we're missing, because of that impatience, we're missing the point that we have to be kind with ourselves. We're here for a very short time. We have a very limited experience here, and we're given a challenging vessel, aren't we? We're given this miraculous physiology, this brain with, I don't know, 69 billion neurons, and we're turned loose into the world and said, figure this out, get out there, live your life, have all these things and do this, and solve all these problems, and oh, by the way, figure out the meaning of this thing. It's like being turned. It's like I was a gearhead as a kid. It's like to be given the keys to a miraculously fast Maserati, and without any instructions. Here, figure it out. And so here we are with this powerful brain, this marvelous body, this emotional system, and we're let loose on the world. We're given to people that have no idea what they're doing, our parents. There's equally lost because they've only been on in the process of figuring this out for a very short period of time. Now, what do we expect to happen? Layered on top of this is all of the cultural, religious pressures and directions we're told. Go there, do this, believe that. And is it any wonder, therefore, that we find ourselves kind of lost and alone sometimes, and with the feeling of what am I missing here? We're just not kind to the process. We have to see it for what it is, and the axiom "life is short" can't be overemphasized. I guess one thought that came to me also regarding this was the idea that being in the present moment, being now, that lesson that we all hopefully are familiar with, the importance of being in the now, is very much connected to impatience. I mean, it's the opposite side of the coin, isn't it? For example, during our day-to-day life, we receive phone calls and we have conversations to do with our, trying to work out how to get the plumber in, or get the car fixed, or work out a bill online, and we these conversations that we have so many times are layered with impatience. We don't have time for this. This is an interruption to my day, and I have come to see them not as interruptions, but as necessary reinforcement to the process of being in the now. They are helpful reminders that this is where I need to be in this conversation at this time. And in doing that, and by extension, I recognize that other people are having this same experience, this experience of impatience and missing the now, that I by extension must feel compassion for them, because I'm feeling the same discomfort. And so looking at others becomes different, because geez, they may not be as well prepared for this problem as I am, and I'm not saying I'm well prepared. I'm just I've picked up some tools, and I understand some principles, and but they may have none. They may have no clues. They may be very early in their uncovering of who they really are. And so how difficult is it for them to even consider this, that impatience is a problem, quote unquote? They might not fathom that. They can't grasp that. No, I have to have things now, done, this, that. So it affects everything in our lives, this tendency to slip out of the now and into impatience. Now, a key to that, though, in my summation, is when I didn't understand, when I thought I was only my mind and only my thoughts at that level of understanding in my life, there was no way out. I was the old saying, I'm trying to understand and fix something that caused the very problem I'm trying to fix. Our mind is a wonderful tool and extremely capable of analyzing as analyzing facts and data and making decisions, helping us make decisions as to directions and things. But it's not a place of peace, and certainly in my mind it has never been. And so, in order to touch on this place of patience, we have to touch on that within us that is the eternality of ourselves, that thing which is our essence. And therefore, your first item here was prayer and meditation. It's in touching prayer and meditation that we discover infinite patience. And when we discover infinite patience and we see things as they really are, in the quiet and stillness of ourselves, then this 80 and 90-year experience has a perspective, has a frame, has a you listed what's the sense of purpose. The purpose is to experience this 80 or 90 years and peel back the layers of our unconsciousness. And if we can do that, I find that this 80 or 90-year experience that we have can be full, and it's not an angry place or discomforting place. It's actually a wonderful place. It's a place where we talk about why am I so angry with so and so, or why am I frustrated here, or why when I turn on the news does my mind explode and I start bleeding from my ears? Why does that happen to me? Well, when we but going backwards, when we work through this process of understanding and experiencing quietness and stillness and meditation, and then we discover, wow, the perspective of life changes, and then we discover, wow, I have a precious moment here, and I'm not going to squander it on anything that might disrupt it. We discover that we can be kind spontaneously. We can be generous. We can be not angry, because we see our perspective. We have a bird's eye view that says, oh, wow, yeah, I'm here for a very short time. I'm going to enjoy the ride, and I'm going to be the best version of myself that I can be, which is not a personality self, but the best version of ourselves, which is the essence of who we were before we were. So patience is a very comforting word. And some thoughts on it.
Yeah, I find that what helps me with patience is to try to tackle the whole concept of time. That if I come to an understanding that time doesn't exist, in reality, it's something that's created by humans. And so if I can look at time as just from the perspective of everything happens in the time that it was meant to happen. And if by my watch or my phone's time, because I don't wear a watch anymore because it's just on my phone.
Yeah.
If my phone says, well, you're going to be 15 minutes late, I can use my mind to say, that's just a human construct and it's not important.
Yeah, that's right.
And whatever was supposed to happen in those 15 minutes is going to happen, but it may not be what I thought it was going to be.
Yeah.
But it will be just fine.
Yeah.
And I've recently talked to a couple people who have experienced implementing that thought. Uh, Somebody, in fact, was my sister, who said, you know, I was supposed to be at this meeting at this particular time, and I realized that due to traffic, I was going to be a half hour late. And I just told myself, well, I guess that's supposed to be, that I'm not supposed to be there on time,
Mm-hmm.
that I'm supposed to be there a half hour later, and that's okay.
Mm-hmm.
And she said a few years ago that would have driven her crazy, and she would have been upset and concerned and honking at other drivers and just trying to get there no matter what, and maybe even risked her life to get there on time. And now it made no difference to her, and just said it will be what it will be, and that's fine.
Yeah.
And being able to change that perspective in her mind brought her peace.
Yeah.
And that's one thing that, when you said these concepts brought the idea of patience to you, patience can bring you peace if you can incorporate patience into your life, not just for yourself, but as you mentioned, being patient with other people,
Yeah.
because you understand that they may not have the understanding that you have of time.
Yeah.
Uh, but things happen the way they're supposed to,
Yeah.
and
Absolutely.
if you can bring yourself to that point. Now, you mentioned that prayer and meditation helps get you to that point. Is there anything else or any other tools that you use to bring you patience?
Yeah, spending time outdoors is a real, very important thing for me. Um, when I look around this office, it doesn't do anything to inspire me that way. It only reminds me of things I have to do. But when I walk outside and I see the mountains and the blue sky, and I'm an astronomy bit of an astronomy amateur astronomer, and looking up at the clear skies at night and marveling at the light that enters my eyes from some galaxy millions of light years away. Those kinds of things quiet the brain. They stop the brain from slow the brain down, certainly, and they allow me to enter a place where I can touch the vitalness of my interior, the thing that is inside of me that I know is permanent, is eternal. Whole nother discussion, of course, on that. And how do you know that? How do you really know that that exists? And I, science would certainly say no to this. Scientific community would absolutely disagree. But when you experience the silence within and your mind quiets, and all of a sudden you're touched in a deep way, and you have a feeling come over you that is calming and steady and peaceful. But there are no thoughts associated with it. There is only the feeling that comes. You just say, well, that's as real as I think anything can be. I didn't conjure this up. This is not emotional hysteria. This is something that enveloped me when I allowed time for it to come. and I was patient, and I didn't fight my thoughts. And when it comes, you feel at home in the capital H sense. You feel where you need to be.
So could you elaborate on that statement that you just made? I didn't fight my thoughts.
Yeah, and when you for beginner meditators or people that you know, it is a big difficulty. You know, the meditation guidelines. You know, you're trying to quiet your thoughts. Well, you've spent your whole life nurturing these thoughts. You've spent your whole existence thinking up to the first point where you probably tried to meditate. Except you had, I'm seeking you, the whole collective, all of us have had many, small experiences prior to our meditative attempt in which we did touch on the silence. We did feel that peace, that sense of I am home. But we just ignored them. We skirted over them. They happened when maybe we saw our newborn baby or our grandbaby or a beautiful sunset where our mind was tricked into being silent. It wasn't tricked, but we were able to let it go, and the mind quieted, and we felt that, and we felt just very wonderful experience. That's a hint at this possibility when we become a practitioner of meditation, of what we can do more or less at will. We can decide that at this moment I can say no to my mind, the rattling of my mind. Now, going back to your question, I guess it's when the thought comes in, the last thing you want to do is resist it, because to resist it is to focus on it. And so you have to follow the thought. You have to follow the thought and just keep on redirecting. It's kind of like herding cats, I suppose. You know, you keep on, bumping, your thoughts begin, and you come back in line, and you quiet them, and then there's another thought occurs, and you kind of just gently coax it back away, and it's this constant herding of cats back to quiet that ultimately you gain practice in, you gain efficiency in, because when you begin to return to the silence, it becomes easier to return the next time. Very minutely, but it does. It becomes easier and easier, and so that's what I mean. We can't fight this. We can't. I'm going to light this candle. I'm going to sit on this pillow for 1 hour. God damn me, and I'm going to so I'm going to quiet my mind today. Oh, okay, good luck. Doesn't work that way.
Yeah. Well, we're talking about tools that people can use to find peace. So providing that tool of patience for yourself, and giving patience to others, and that giving patience comes from a compassion. If you can be compassionate with yourself. So that was why I put self-love on the list, because one of the key components, I feel, to being able to find peace is to be able to love yourself. Because if you can do that, then it's a lot easier to love others. And the conclusion I've reached after all my spiritual work is that that is what we are. We are love. And if we can discover that and learn to give it to others, then that whole thought of, I can't give somebody something I don't have. So I must have love if I'm able to give love.
Yeah. Yeah.
And therefore, if I look at, okay, what is this love thing? What is that love that I have? It takes me back to the fact that what is God? You know, whether you call it God or you call it the creator or you call it source, whatever you call that, God is love. End of story. So if God is love and I have love within me, then I've got divinity within me. And if I can understand then that, all right, I've got divinity in me, oh, you have divinity within you. Because we are the same, you and I. And if that's the case, then it's certainly the basis for finding peace.
Yeah.
Because how dare I show anger at you? How dare I attack you? Because who am I attacking? I am attacking the divine.
Mm-hmm.
So as I look at those concepts and think about finding peace, that peace is to be found from the knowledge that I am divine, you are divine, everybody has divinity within them, and therefore I cannot be prejudiced against you, I cannot hold grudges against you, I cannot not forgive you because of that divinity.
Yeah.
I don't know. Any thoughts on that?
Yeah. I mean, you touch on something that was a huge threat, a step for me in my journey, and that is, we talked about meditation, and you know this. There needs to be effort that you put into it, but at the same time, no effort. It, we are impatient with people. We do lack kindness on occasion. But an important moment in my experience was when I recognized that all I was doing when I was impatient or not disciplined or enough to sit on the pillow or whatever, I was forgetting who I was, who I always was. And after that that reality set in, that my impatience of a minute ago is of no consequence to this moment. This is a new moment, and I was only reliving old energies. I was only recalling old circumstances that caused me to be impatient, and that's not really who I am. It was my old persona doing whatever it thought it needed to do to protect me. And I know now that that's not necessary. It's an inconvenience, actually. It's just a waste of energy, and I'm letting it go. I'm in the Christian term, you would say you forgive yourself. But forgiving has, the word forgiving can have too much connotation connected to sin. No, it's not sin. It's not necessary to forgive. It's simply to recognize you have missed the mark of what you wanted, which is to completely realize 100% of the time your essence. And you forgot. That's why it's helpful to sit on a pillow and quiet your mind so you remember. But if you do forget, and you will, daily, possibly daily, and especially if you turn on the news, you have to remember, no, I have to remind myself, no, that's the old tape or bit that's being run within my brain, and it's of no relevance now. And there's cellular energies that have to be dispersed, and I will let them go. I'll just keep on letting them go. Old grievances, I just let them go. They occurred, but they're not of value to me now because it's not who I really was. It wasn't who I was then. It isn't who I am now. Now I am not that. And so that concept of patience comes back, which is that's the process. Why do I keep on having these old thoughts? Why am I always so angry when I think of that person over there? Yeah, that's a good question. it's a why. Remember who you are. Remember what your essence is, and know that your brain is doing its job. Your brain, which is a great receptacle of information and memories, is bringing back thoughts that individual elicits in you. It's doing its job. Your job as the overseer of your brain is to not let it get you off track. Oh, no, I let that go before, and I let it go now. I am at peace with that individual. I understand now who I am, and I understand who he is. He might not understand who he is. That's very, very, very likely. He may have no concept. And to some degree, I think none of us really understand completely who we are. I think we are all at some level of understanding, and it differs. People would say it's different degrees of enlightenment. Perhaps they might use the word enlightenment. But I like to think of it as, we each have peeled back the onion differently to different depths. And we can't, and the goal in life is just to keep on peeling, keep on pulling it back and exposing what we have come to understand as our true self. And when we're impatient, we can say, oh, no, that's old tapes. That's my brain doing its job. Thank you very much, brain. I don't want you to forget. You don't have to forget. And I think, you can probably attest to this phenomenon. There are individuals in my life that hurt me badly, I thought, quote unquote. And I can think, and I can tell you stories right now of what happened, but they elicit no emotion in me now, nothing. Because to use the Christian term, I guess I've forgiven them. To use a more clear term, no, I've recognized that memory, those memories are of no relevance to my true condition, which is my essence. It's not important. It was not important then, felt very important. But it was not important then, and it's certainly not important now. And so that letting go, I don't know if it's so much of letting go. I like to think of it as just recognizing your brain's doing its job and dismiss it. That's all. Just dismiss it. It's, get on with your being. And don't accept guilt or shame or anger. None of us. I can't. I was thinking about anger the other day, and maybe in context of some of this. And who the heck wants to feel angry about anything? Does anybody feel angry and then really feel good about it? I mean, every time I have been angry in my life, I feel this constriction in my heart and this tenseness in my body, and My kids used to joke the veins in my forehead would begin to pop when I was angry. They won't let me forget that. I have to. But nobody feels good when they're angry. And so why do we allow these old thoughts to come into our back into our present moment and rob us of our remembering of who we are, of truly who we truly are? It's because our brain is, doing its job. As I say, it's bringing up memories, but our oversight is different.
Well, anger is just one of our emotions, and so it's neither good nor bad. It just is.
Yes.
So the idea of being able to look at your emotion and say, "Oh, I'm feeling angry now." How about that?
Yeah.
And then just let it pass through can be healthy.
Yeah.
If you feel that your anger is building up to where you have to do something to express it, other than just recognize it for what it is and then let it pass, uh, and there have been therapies, I guess, where you either scream at the top of your lungs to get your anger out, or you punch something to get your anger out. Not a person, but a something.
Yeah.
That still lets you know it's okay to be angry and get it out and then move on.
Yeah.
And that's, maybe there's peace then on the other side of that,
Yeah.
because peace is what we want to focus on and get to. So something else that you brought up a couple of times is the news and watching the news and what that brings out in you. One thing to get more peace in your life is don't watch the news.
It might
uh,
might be the right approach for you if you can't do it
if,
without it.
if that brings those things up, I just interviewed somebody recently who said she never watches the news. She leaves that to her husband, and then he fills her in on what she needs to know. And I thought, well, that might work for you, but how's that working out for your husband? you know, uh, you know, that's something to be able to allow that world of constant fear-producing information attack your brain,
Yeah.
and have you be able to put up a defense mechanism that says, okay, that's out there. It doesn't need to be in here.
Yeah.
Because it's very difficult to avoid the news totally, because it's going to creep in from many different places, including friends who want to say, did you hear? Or did you know?
Yeah.
So it's going to happen.
Yeah.
But if you want more peace in your life, then cut back on how much fear, because that's what the news does. It produces fear, and we get addicted to that.
Yeah.
We want more of it. So there's some people who have the news on 24 hours, well,
Yeah.
except for sleeping. So, but 16 hours a day, that news is going on. It's in the background or the foreground, depending on when, if they're listening to it intently, or they just have it on because they feel like they're going to miss something.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So,
Yeah. You have to avoid the noise as best
yeah.
you can, and there is an enormous amount of noise available to us. The noise of the internet, the noise of news, and yeah, I've worked hard at trying to find sources of information that aren't their only goal is not just to elicit fear in me,
Right.
and news organizations that are truly providing information of today's occurrences. I think I
Right.
try to look for those, and that helps a lot because they leave out the inflammatory, insinuations, and they don't provide the color commentary, the subtle color commentary that elicits
Right.
your anger or your fear. They 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 just provide information as to what occurred and what is happening, and those are helpful. Uh, I like to know that. I think, but each of us has to make a judgment as to our level of consumption, I guess. Uh,
Yeah.
but
Yeah, that's for sure.
yeah, but you touch on something really important too, and the place, anger is not neither good nor bad. As a male in Western society, I only came to understand how what my emotions really were, probably 15 years ago. I had no idea
Yeah.
what my emotions were for. I knew, based on some casual reading of psychology, that emotions are important. You can't deny your emotions. You can't deny what you're feeling. But I didn't understand that on that Maserati I referred to, that we were given the keys to, the emotions are the warning lights. And when the warning lights are going off, you have to pay attention to them. You have to ask yourself, am I low on oil here? Or why am I angry? And again, if your goal is to be angry, well, just keep on being angry or
Yeah.
fearful. But if your goal is to find peace and harmony in your life, then figure out why the light's coming on. Why this little light flashing red here? Oh, okay. Maybe it's for this reason. And this is where the work, the real, the work of, this is not really meditation can be helpful here, because meditating on these things that cause the red oil light to come on is helpful to say, you know
Yeah.
what, I'm going to take that into meditation. And that can be very, very helpful because it helps peel back layers. Uh, so emotions for me were, I only thought the only emotion a man can have is anger. That was the only, he could express laughter, and anger was it. That was it. Don't show any other emotion.
Yeah.
But they're vital to us. They're absolutely imperative that we understand what we are feeling, and therefore it's the gauge of how our car is running, how our miraculous Maserati is operating right
Yeah.
now.
Well, I love the fact that there are now a couple Pixar movies that focus on identifying your emotions and then
Yes,
how to express them
yes,
in a way that's helpful rather than hurtful.
yeah. I think I saw
Uh,
the first one. I don't recall the name of it, but I saw the first one some years ago.
I think it's Inside Out,
Yes, yes, yeah,
and now there's an Inside Out 2 in the theaters.
very good.
And, to think that there will be a whole generation of young people exposed to that and old people, because we learn from those things too.
Yep,
Uh, just to know that what's happening on this earth right now, which is an increase of the frequency vibration of not only the planet itself, but the human population on the planet,
yeah,
so that we are getting a better understanding of a lot of these things.
yeah, very good. There, and that's the kind of information that is nice to find, to stumble upon. This,
Yeah.
this a charitable act by some human being. Um, who's the fellow on CBS News? Steve, not Martin. What's his name? He has always good, wonderful, good-hearted segments at the end of the CBS evening news frequently, in which
Yeah.
he displays the goodness that people can express to their fellow man in very unique ways. He goes out into the country and finds some person who's doing something unique. Might be a young high school girl who decided to bring food to her neighbor, and that turned into a food bank type of stuff.
Yeah.
And there's, and those kinds of things are good to reinforce and help us,
Yeah.
see the good that is possible when people act on their better self, from their better self.
I guess I missed those things because I don't watch the news anymore.
Okay.
It's been a
Yeah.
couple years since I just don't bother watching the
Yeah.
news because
Yeah.
it's just too much
Yeah.
that causes turmoil within me.
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah. I understand. And
so
especially
another
political
thing
season.
on our list is the idea of othering, uh, which is really to say that I'm better than these people, or those people are better than I am, and they're other than I am. If we can figure out individually how to look at each person as that divine, at their divine essence, that same essence that's within each one of us, then we don't have to say, well, they're other than I am. They're a different color, or they're a different religion, uh, or they're a different status, a different class. That if we can see that oneness, that we are all the same and all part of that same divinity, then we can come to a sense of peace within ourselves. And that's not easy.
No.
It's
No, it isn't.
easy to maybe do with your friends and those people within your culture, but then to do it with people you disagree with totally.
Yeah. Difficult.
Whether it's what you see as their lack of morality, or their lack of truth telling, or their lack of concern for anybody else, and to look at that person and say, oh, you have that same divine spark in you that I have in me, and we are the same.
Yeah. Yeah.
As
years ago.
The quote from Jesus, love your neighbor,
Yeah.
love your enemy.
Yeah. Yeah. Love your neighbor.
That's the tough one, love your
Yeah.
enemy. So you were going to say years ago?
Yeah, my short answer, my short feeling about that is there is no way we can love others until we, as we should, as at the level that they rightly deserve, until we come to understand and love ourselves that way. I think to do it, to attempt to love others in that way, before we have done the work within, creates religion, creates a system of ethical behaviors. And those work to a degree. And some would argue that that's what the country and the world needs now, is better, more ethical behavior. But the essence of really what has to happen is there has to be within each individual change. And the change that must occur is the unveiling of each individual's essential self. When that happens, it is a natural phenomenon that they will love, that they will be accepting, that they will not be racist. Not to say that, I think the reason laws are necessary is because we're in an intermediate zone, because people are going to spew hate and anger. And so we need laws in order to control that behavior. But the ultimate solution is individual enlightenment, individual understanding of we are the essence of all that is, and therefore that's how I live. That's how I will live. I will live like that, and therefore there's no place to be angry or racist or separate from others. But again, it's a life. I think it's a lifelong process of peeling back all of the baggage and all of the old programs and all of the old embedded energies that inhibit our ability to see the true reality of what is around us. I know that when I first started meditating, I knew that this was something significant, because all of a sudden certain negative, angry behaviors just dissipated. Certain things just went away. It was and stuff that I was nagged with my whole life. We all have those things that, recurring negative themes of whatever they are. And I was shocked when I first recognized the connection. I had been meditating in the morning, and something occurred, and yesterday that event would have caused a very negative reaction in me, and now I felt nothing. I was released from it, and that was amazing. That was a miracle to me. It felt like a miracle. I had been nagged my whole life by those kinds of things, and all of a sudden, in that particular minor case, I can't even, the details almost escape me, but it was gone. And I thought, wow, this is how this works. I don't have to worry about that external behavior. I have to worry about the internal workings of my Maserati. And I have to, everything else takes care of itself. The details are taken care of. I think that's why I know we touched earlier that when you touch the stillness within you, the change happens. It not because you make it happen, it just happens. All you have to do is allow. But it's a lifelong. It's a lifelong process too. I don't think it's anything else.
So it sounds like what's bringing you peace is a series of spiritual practices that you do almost daily. Is that true?
They're not formal though. I'm not real formal with them. I'm very spontaneous with them. I walk out to the patio and I sit down and I just my mind quiets. I feel the breeze, hear the birds. I will enter meditation on occasion, but it's really very spontaneous these days. You know, I find
I know from our prior discussion that you were doing yoga on a regular basis for a while. Do you still do that?
I was. No, I haven't done it much recently, and when I say recently, I'm saying last couple of years. I have not done as much of that. Still attempt to hike, to walk. I find that very meditative. Go on hikes and walk, physically get some, exercise. Now I don't do yoga, but I do a certain. I've had some shoulder issues, and I'm doing some muscle work, and I'm trying to do it in a kind of a meditative way. I'm trying to be present in what I'm doing, but not yoga positions, asanas. I'm not doing too much of that anymore. I find I will move into some positions just to stretch my back on occasion. But,
yeah,
yeah.
Right. Okay. One of the things that I'm very interested in is how to get in touch with that inner voice. Now, we talk about meditation as one way to do it, but there's also a sense that we have an intuitive sense that comes with us at birth, and that intuitive sense that helps us navigate the world because of all of the other influences on us as we start to grow and develop, the cultural influences, our parents, our church, our peers, we begin to stop paying attention to that intuitive voice. And over time, we learn to ignore it. And if we can get back in touch with that intuitive voice, and some people just say, well, that's the Holy Spirit, or some people call it spirit guides, but there are helps along the way in this journey in our Maserati, as you say, that help provide us with the manual that we didn't get when we were first born. So we have to create that manual or help people who know what's in that manual, give us the information to navigate this life to optimum performance, and to keep the fear away and to bring us peace as we navigate it.
Yeah.
So do you listen to an intuitive voice that helps guide you, and where does that come from?
It is also, I mentioned earlier that all of us, regardless of our spiritual journey, have had experiences in the past. We didn't understand them. We glossed over them probably. But in hindsight, you can go look back and see the dots in the road. Oh, that's what that was. That was intuition. Yes, I have intuition, and I still go back. I go back to meditation and mindfulness. It's in that process that I learned what that voice sounds like, and that very statement is a big contradiction, because first of all, it's not a voice for me, and it doesn't have any sound. It's mostly a feeling that comes over me, and then my mind says, aha, that's the extent of the conversation. It's a feeling. There's an idea that I might be exploring, or feeling comes over me and I say, oh. And again, looking back in my life, I can think of a few instances as a young boy, in fact, where I had an intuition that was, I hesitate to say this, but you can trust your intuition, because to say that is to really open up a can of worms for individuals that might pick up a loaded gun and put it to their head. That's an analogy I'm saying. They might not understand exactly at what point is that a true statement that you can trust your intuition? At what point is that? Well, you have to decide. There's nobody that can. You have to decide, but you're gonna know, because it'll be consistently. For me, it's consistently a calming effect. It's never hyper. It's never anxious. It's never excited. It's a calming effect. It's a knowing. It's a quietness. It's never hyperactive, and it'll go and it'll slip away before if I'm not sensitive to that, it'll slip away and it'll be gone. So it is another example of how I feel a connectedness to something beyond myself. It is a.
Yeah, I often find when I first wake up in the morning, and you're still in that sort of theta state between being fully awake and being half asleep, that messages come through at that point in time that I can rely on.
Yeah.
That say, yes, that's a good idea. I want to act on that.
Yeah.
And I need to write that down before I lose it.
Yeah.
That's one point. Sometimes it's in the shower when.
Yeah. Yeah. I have experienced those intermediate steps in sleep where, yeah, there's a certain level of clarity that comes, and it's like, oh yeah. I mean, and this intuition, that we're talking about, for me, it's sometimes extremely practical. It's a solution that I never saw to a technical problem, and I never saw it, never thought about it, and all the time my brain was mashing through it, never saw it, and all of a sudden, oh, look at that. Or it can be something. Example was, I may have made this comment. Told you this story when I was a little boy. I was probably 9. I don't know now, 8 or 9 years old, and playing in the yard. And I looked across at the Protestant boy who was playing in the yard with his mom or with his brothers, I think. And he was a very well-behaved little guy, And I was not like me. I was breaking windows in abandoned buildings. If I could do it, I'd throw a rock at a window faster than. And I knew it came over me. It washed over me. It was the same thing. There can't be a God that would condemn him to hell because he's Protestant. That's impossible. It cannot be. It wasn't. I didn't have to think about it anymore. It was over. I had an answer to something that I knew at the depths of my soul could not be. So it can be that kind of thing, but it can be a very practical solution to a technical problem.
A knowing, yeah. You just know it to be true. There's no question.
Yeah. It might as well, if it's a technical problem, it might as well be done, because it's as good as done. You know what I'm saying?
Sure.
Whatever the problem I was trying to solve was, well, that's done. Okay, I can move on to the next thing. It was that kind of feeling of, that is finished. I just got what I needed. And so that is a remarkable thing, and it points to me the connectedness to all of us, that we are nodes in a magical array connected to all that is.
Yeah.
And when we
Yeah.
tap into that connectedness, our lives are enriched.
Yeah.
They're better.
So, one of my thoughts was in terms of just helping the audience find peace is one easy thing to do is to take back your power. And what I mean by that is really to stop hating. That hate as an emotion doesn't benefit anybody.
Yeah.
And if you can take away what feeds your anger, think about what it is, stop hating, and turn that into loving. And you have the power to do that because it's a choice. So the next time that you feel like you're looking at somebody from a different political party, if you're looking at somebody from a different country, if you're looking at somebody who's an immigrant and just say, I hate you, catch yourself as soon as you think that hate is serving any purpose and flip it around and change the word to love. And the amount of peace you can feel just by doing that is amazing. So Tony, as I do with every guest every time, if there are any other words of wisdom or just words that you'd like to leave the audience with, now's the time.
Yeah. Oh, I would just say, I would encourage us all to be patient with ourselves in the journey that we're on. Be patient, be kind, be gentle. You're doing the best you can at this moment, and there is more. There is more to life, and more to understand, more to experience, and we can indeed have in this incarnation ever expanding peace. I hope that's half meaningful at least. And be patient with yourself. There's more to come.
Okay. That's great. So audience, as always, take what you've heard and incorporate it into your life if it resonates with you. And if it doesn't, just put the rest on a shelf until you're ready for it. Have a great holiday season, and until next time, this has been your spiritual journey.